The mysterious shell power. Nneoma stood at the edge of the ocean, the salty spray carried on the breeze caressing her skin. She closed her eyes, feeling the weight of her longing. She had always wanted to be a mother, to feel a child grow inside her, to hold a tiny hand in hers. But it seemed the universe had other plans. As she walked along the beach, the sound of the waves and the cries of seagulls filled the air. She felt a sense of peace wash over her, but it was short-lived. The pain of her infertility cut deep, and she couldn't help but wonder if she was somehow broken. Nneoma's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of her name being called. She turned to see her best friend, Ada, waving at her from the shore. Ada's bright smile and infectious laughter were just what Nneoma needed to take her mind off her troubles. As they walked together, Ada asked Nneoma about her latest doctor's appointment. Nneoma hesitated, unsure of how to share the news. "It's not good, Ada. The doctor says I have a condition that makes it difficult for me to conceive." Ada's expression turned sympathetic, and she took Nneoma's hand in hers. "We'll get through this together, Nneoma. We'll find a way." Nneoma smiled weakly, feeling a sense of gratitude towards her friend. But as they continued their walk, Nneoma couldn't shake off the feeling that something was missing. She felt a deep connection to the ocean, as if it held secrets and answers she desperately needed. As the sun began to set, Nneoma and Ada settled down on the beach, watching the stars twinkle to life. Nneoma felt a sense of peace settle over her, but it was short-lived. She saw a figure emerging from the waves, a woman with long, flowing hair and piercing green eyes. Nneoma's heart skipped a beat as the woman approached her. There was something ethereal about her, something that commanded attention. Ada, sensing Nneoma's unease, stood up, ready to defend her friend. But to Nneoma's surprise, the woman smiled warmly and reached out a hand. "Nneoma, I have been waiting for you," she said, her voice like music. Nneoma took the woman's hand, feeling a jolt of electricity run through her body. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I am Mommy Water," the woman replied, her eyes glinting with mischief. "And I have a gift for you, Nneoma." Ada took a step back, her eyes wide with fear. "Mommy Water. But isn't she a myth?" Mommy Water chuckled, her laughter like the tinkling of bells. "Myths are often rooted in truth, child," she said. "And I am here to give Nneoma a gift that will change her life forever." Nneoma felt a shiver run down her spine as Mommy Water reached into the fold of her cloak and pulled out a small, delicate shell. "This shell has the power to heal and nurture life," Mommy Water said, her eyes locked on Nneoma's. "But it comes with a warning: use it wisely, and respect the balance of nature." Nneoma took the shell, feeling its smooth surface and the strange energy emanating from it. She looked up at Mommy Water, unsure of what to say. Mommy Water smiled again, her eyes glinting with knowing. "You will understand, child," she said. "In time, you will understand." And with that, she turned and disappeared into the waves, leaving Nneoma and Ada staring after her in confusion and wonder. Nneoma stood there, shell in hand, trying to process what had just happened. Ada broke the silence, her voice barely above a whisper. "What just happened? Who was that woman?" Nneoma shook her head, still trying to wrap her mind around the encounter. "I don't know, but she said her name was Mommy Water. And she gave me this shell." Ada's eyes widened as she took in the shell. "It's beautiful," she said. "But what's it for?" Nneoma hesitated, unsure of how to explain. "Mommy Water said it has the power to heal and nurture life. But I don't know what that means." Ada's expression turned thoughtful. "I think I've heard stories about Mommy Water. She's a water spirit, isn't she? Associated with fertility and childbirth." Nneoma's heart skipped a beat as she made the connection. "You think this shell could help me get pregnant?" Ada nodded. "Maybe. But we need to be careful. We don't know what kind of power this shell holds. Nneoma nodded, determination rising within her. I'll be careful. But I have to try. I have to know if this shell can really help me. As they walked back to their village, Nneoma couldn't help but feel a sense of hope rising within her. Maybe, just maybe, this shell was the answer to her prayers. Nneoma couldn't wait to test the shell's power. She had heard stories of Mommy Water's gifts, how they could bring fertility and abundance to those who possessed them. She decided to start small, using the shell to help her friend, Amora, who had been struggling to conceive. Amora was skeptical at first, but Nneoma convinced her to let her try. Nneoma held the shell and focused her thoughts on Amora's desire for a child. She could feel the shell's energy coursing through her, a warm, tingling sensation that seemed to grow stronger with each passing moment. After a few minutes, Nneoma opened her eyes and smiled at Amora. "It's done," she said. "Now, let's wait and see." Weeks went by, and Amora didn't mention anything about the shell or Nneoma's attempt to help her. Nneoma began to worry that it hadn't worked, that the shell's power was just a myth. But then, one morning, Amora came to Nneoma's doorstep, a huge smile on her face. "I'm pregnant," she exclaimed, tears of joy streaming down her face. Nneoma was overjoyed, hugging Amora tightly. "The shell worked," she whispered, amazed. As news of the shell's power spread, people began to come to Nneoma, seeking her help. She used the shell to heal the sick, to bring fertility to barren lands, and to nurture life in all its forms. But with each use, Nneoma felt the shell's power growing stronger, more unpredictable. She began to realize that Mommy Water's gift came with a price, one that she wasn't sure she was willing to pay. Nneoma's success with the shell had made her a celebrated figure in the village. People came from far and wide to seek her help, and she was happy to oblige. But as time passed, she began to feel a growing sense of unease. The shell's power was becoming harder to control. She would use it to help someone, and then feel a strange, tingling sensation in her fingers, as if the shell was urging her to do more. One night, as she was drifting off to sleep, Nneoma felt a presence in her room. She opened her eyes to find Mommy Water standing beside her bed. "Nneoma, you have used my gift well," Mommy Water said, her voice low and mysterious. "But remember, with great power comes great responsibility. Do not let the shell's power consume you." Nneoma sat up, feeling a shiver run down her spine. "I won't," she promised. "I'll be careful." Mommy Water nodded, her eyes glinting in the moonlight. "See that you are," she said. "For if you are not, the consequences will be dire." And with that, she vanished, leaving Nneoma feeling shaken and unsure. Nneoma tried to heed Mommy Water's warning, but the shell's power was seductive. She found herself using it more and more, feeling its energy coursing through her veins like a river of fire. At first, everything seemed fine. The crops grew taller and stronger, the sick were healed, and the barren women conceived. But as time passed, Nneoma began to notice strange side effects. The plants grew too fast, becoming tangled and twisted. The healed sick began to fall ill again, their bodies racked with pain. And the children born to the barren women were different. They had eyes that seemed to see right through you, and skin that shimmered like the moon. Nneoma realized, too late, that the shell's power was not a blessing, but a curse. She had unleashed a force beyond her control, and now it was destroying everything she had tried to help. In desperation, she turned to Ada, begging for her help. Together, they tried to find a way to reverse the damage, but it was too late. The shell's power had grown too strong, and it would not be silenced. As the village descended into chaos, Nneoma knew she had to face the consequences of her actions. She had played God, and now she would have to pay the price. Nneoma stood before the village elders, her head bowed in shame. I was wrong to use the shell's power, she admitted. I didn't understand its true nature. The elders looked at her with a mixture of anger and disappointment. You have brought destruction upon us, one of them said. How can we trust you now? Nneoma knew she had no answer. She had made a mistake, and now she would have to pay the price. As she left the elders' hut, she saw Ada waiting for her. What will happen to me? Nneoma asked, feeling a sense of despair. Ada shook her head. I don't know, she said. But I'll stand by you, no matter what. Together, they walked through the village, seeing the destruction that Nneoma's actions had wrought. The once thriving crops were now withered and dead, the sick lay suffering, and the children born to the barren women seemed to be growing stronger by the day. Nneoma knew she had to find a way to make things right. She couldn't undo the damage, but she could try to mitigate it. As she walked, an idea began to form in her mind. She would find Mommy Water, and beg for her help. Maybe, just maybe, the water spirit could reverse the curse and restore balance to the village. But as she turned to Ada to share her plan, she saw something that made her blood run cold. The children, the ones born to the barren women, were gathering in the center of the village. And they were looking at her with eyes that seemed to see right through her soul. Nneoma felt a shiver run down her spine as she watched the children gather. They seemed to be waiting for something or someone. And then, as if on cue, they turned to face her. Nneoma, one of them said, its voice low and husky. We have been waiting for you. Nneoma tried to step back, but her feet seemed rooted to the spot. Ada grabbed her hand, trying to pull her away, but Nneoma couldn't move. The children began to close in on her, their eyes fixed on hers. Nneoma felt a sense of dread building inside her. What did they want from her? And then, just as suddenly as it had started, everything stopped. The children froze, their eyes still fixed on Nneoma. And then, in unison, they spoke. The time of reckoning is upon you, Nneoma, they said. You have used the shell's power for the last time. Nneoma felt a surge of fear. What did they mean? And then, as if in answer, the children began to change. Their bodies began to shift and contort, their limbs stretching and twisting until they were no longer recognizable as human. Nneoma realized, with a jolt of horror, that the children were not children at all. They were the shell's true form, and they had been awakened by her use of its power. Nneoma watched in horror as the children transformed into creatures unlike any she had ever seen. Their bodies were fluid, shifting and changing like the water itself. Ada grabbed her hand, pulling her back. We have to get out of here, she whispered. But Nneoma was transfixed. She couldn't look away from the creatures, which seemed to be growing more powerful by the second. And then, one of them spoke. Nneoma, it said, its voice like a wave crashing on the shore. You have unleashed us. Now you must face the consequences. Nneoma felt a surge of fear. What did they mean? And then, as if in answer, the creatures began to move towards her. Ada pulled her back, but Nneoma knew they couldn't outrun the creatures. They were too powerful, too relentless. Just as all hope seemed lost, Nneoma remembered the shell. She had used its power to awaken the creatures, but maybe, just maybe, she could use it to control them. She reached into her pocket, feeling the shell's smooth surface. And then, with a surge of determination, she raised it up. The creatures halted, their eyes fixed on the shell. And then, in unison, they spoke. You cannot control us, Nneoma, they said. We are the shell's true power. And now, we will show you our true form. Nneoma held up the shell, but the creatures just laughed. You think a simple shell can control us, they said. We are the ancient ones, the ones who have been awakened by your foolishness. And then, they began to change. Their bodies grew larger, more monstrous. Scales emerged from their skin, and their eyes turned into glowing orbs. Nneoma stumbled back, horrified. What had she unleashed? The creatures began to move towards her, their massive bodies undulating like waves. Nneoma knew she couldn't outrun them. She had to think of something else. And then, she remembered Mommy Water's words. The shell's power is not to be used for destruction, but for creation. Nneoma looked at the shell in her hand, and then at the creatures. She had an idea. Ada, I need your help, she said. We have to use the shell's power to create something new. Something that will balance out the destruction we've unleashed. Ada looked at her uncertainly, but Nneoma knew she had no choice. She had to try. Together, they focused their energy on the shell. They poured all their thoughts and intentions into it, imagining a new creation that would bring balance to the chaos. And then, in a burst of light, it happened. A new creature emerged from the shell's power. One that was both fierce and beautiful. The new creature stood before them, its body a shimmering mass of colors. It had the form of a great cat, but its face seemed to shift and change like the shadows on a moonlit night. Nneoma felt a sense of wonder and awe. She had never seen anything like this before. The creature turned to her, its eyes gleaming with intelligence. I am the balance, it said. I am the one who will restore harmony to this place. And with that, it turned and faced the monstrous creatures that Nneoma had unleashed. They let out a deafening roar, but the new creatures simply raised a paw and touched their foreheads. One by one, the creatures began to transform. Their scales receded, their eyes lost their glow, and their bodies began to shrink back down to their human form. Nneoma watched in amazement as the villagers, now restored to their true forms, stumbled backward in confusion. The new creature turned to her. You have done well, Nneoma, it said. You have restored balance to this place. But Nneoma knew that she couldn't take credit for this. It was Mommy Water's power, and the shell's power, that had done this. What are you? She asked the creature. I am the spirit of the land, it replied. I am the one who will guide and protect this place. And with that, it vanished, leaving Nneoma and Ada to ponder the wonder of what they had just seen. Nneoma and Ada stood there for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. The villagers, now restored to their human forms, were stumbling around, looking confused and disoriented. Nneoma knew she had to do something to help them. She took a deep breath and began to sing a soft, soothing melody. The music seemed to calm the villagers, and they began to gather around her, looking up at her with gratitude in their eyes. As she sang, Nneoma felt a sense of peace wash over her. She knew that she had made a mistake in using the shell's power, but she also knew that she had learned a valuable lesson. When she finished singing, the villagers began to applaud, and Nneoma smiled, feeling a sense of pride and accomplishment. But as she looked around, she saw that Mommy Water was standing there, watching her. The water spirit's eyes seemed to bore into Nneoma's soul, and Nneoma felt a shiver run down her spine. Mommy Water, she said, trying to sound calm. I'm glad you're here. I have something to ask you. Mommy Water raised an eyebrow. What is it, Nneoma? She asked. Nneoma took a deep breath. I want to know how to use the shell's power wisely, she said. I don't want to make another mistake like I did before. Mommy Water nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. I will teach you, she said. But first, you must come with me. Nneoma and Ada stood there for a long time, trying to process what had just happened. The villagers, now restored to their human forms, began to stir, looking around in confusion. Nneoma knew she had to act quickly. She gathered the villagers together and explained what had happened. She told them about the shell, the Mommy Water's power, and the new creature that had been born. The villagers listened in awe, and then they began to ask questions. Nneoma did her best to answer them, but she knew she didn't have all the answers. As the sun began to set, Nneoma knew she had to find Mommy Water. She had to thank her and ask for her guidance. Ada accompanied her to the river, where they found Mommy Water waiting for them. "Well done, Nneoma," Mommy Water said, with a smile. "You have restored balance to this place. But remember, with great power comes great responsibility." Nneoma nodded, feeling a sense of humility. She knew she had learned a valuable lesson. And then, Mommy Water vanished, leaving Nneoma and Ada to make their way back to the village. As they walked, Nneoma turned to Ada. "What do you think the future holds?" she asked. Ada shrugged. "I don't know, but I know one thing. We'll face it together." Nneoma smiled, feeling a sense of gratitude towards her friend. And then, they walked off into the sunset, ready to face whatever came next. I hope you enjoyed the tale. If so, please like the video, comment, share it with your family and friends, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell for more enchanting tales like this one. Goodbye.